He and I have loved each other since we were 16 years old. We are the same age, now 39. We have been married for 13 years and have 2 children. I discovered that he has had an affair for 3 years. Can our marriage be fixed? Welcome to Streams of Love, where we look straight at love, marriage, and the most difficult truths of human emotions. There are relationships that do not begin with the conscious choice of adulthood, but with the early stirrings of love at the age of 16. When 2 people fall in love as teenagers, grow up together, and share more than 2 decades side by side, that love is no longer just an emotion. It gradually becomes part of daily habit, a kind of emotional inertia. In this story, the 2 are the same age, fell in love at 16, married at 26, and are now 39 years old, with 13 years of marriage and 2 children together. Their time together is long enough to be called an entire youth. Yet it is also because it has been so long, so familiar, that love sometimes cools without notice. Not because the affection is gone, but because it is no longer nurtured. When a marriage runs more on responsibility than on emotion, when familiarity replaces connection, gaps begin to appear in one's inner life. And in this case, the greatest shock is the discovery that the husband has had an extramarital relationship lasting 3 years. The question is no longer simply about right or wrong, but this: can a marriage formed in youth, sustained by habit, and wounded by betrayal still be rekindled and healed? Can this marriage be fixed? And if so, where should it begin? Analyzing the context with clarity. In this story, the first thing that needs to be acknowledged is not right or wrong, but the full length of the journey the 2 have traveled together. You fell in love at the age of 16, an age when emotions are pure, but personal identity is still forming. From then until now, you have been together for more than 23 years, meaning that nearly all of your youth, adulthood, and family life have unfolded with each other's presence. This relationship is not just love. It has become a part of life itself, a default setting in the minds of both people. You have been married for 13 years and have 2 children together. At this stage, marriage is often no longer driven by the initial romantic emotions, but by responsibility, roles, and obligations. The wife is the mother of the children. The husband is the family's provider. This stability allows the family to function, but at the same time, it can easily cause the marital relationship to lack deep emotional connection if it is not continuously nurtured. The issue becomes serious when it is discovered that the husband has had an extramarital relationship lasting 3 years. This is not a moment of weakness, not a temporary mistake, but a conscious, sustained, and concealed process. This indicates that within the marriage, there were emotional gaps large enough for another relationship to develop alongside it. It is also important to note that the 2 of you are the same age, grew up together, and had very little time for independent adulthood in other relationships. When people fall in love too early and stay together for too long, a psychological phenomenon can occur. Love gradually turns into inertia. You remain together, remain husband and wife, remain a family, but you no longer actively love or actively choose each other every day. Therefore, this is a type of relationship that is deeply bonded by time and shared memories, yet is prone to emotional inertia, where familiarity replaces connection and responsibility overwhelms active, conscious love. And from this foundation, the key question is not only, can this marriage be fixed, but are both of you still willing to step out of old inertia and rebuild a new, more mature relationship? When did the love cool down? It is very likely that the love in this marriage did not cool only now, but gradually faded many years ago, quietly, slowly, and almost unnoticed until a major disruption occurred. Usually, after a few years of marriage, love begins to shift phases. As life enters the cycle of daily necessities, children, finances, and family responsibilities, the initial romantic feelings are no longer the top priority. The 2 people are still together every day, but most of their energy is spent on maintaining life, not on nurturing the relationship. From that point on, very small but cumulative changes begin to appear. No longer trying to win each other over as in the beginning. No longer being curious about the other person's inner world. No longer being seen through the eyes of someone in love, but only through roles: wife, husband, parents, responsibility. When a person no longer feels like the chosen one, but merely the one who has to be there, emotional connection gradually weakens. At this stage, marriage runs more on obligation than on the voluntary choice of love. Especially for relationships that begin too early, such as falling in love at 16, the issue goes even deeper. At that age, neither person truly knows who they are, what they need, or what kind of partner truly suits them. Personal identity is still incomplete, yet the relationship has already become a fixed part of life. Not having the opportunity to experience other relationships causes many emotions to be suppressed over the years. Curiosity, the desire to be recognized, admired, and to be a different version of oneself. These feelings do not disappear. They simply wait for a chance to resurface, especially in midlife, when people begin to look back on their lives and ask, have I truly lived according to what I wanted? Therefore, infidelity is not because you are not good enough, nor because you failed in your role as a wife or a mother. Infidelity happens because he lacked the inner strength to face his own desires and lacked the responsibility to protect what he already had when confronted with a new emotion. It is crucial to see this essence clearly, because if the wife carries the blame herself, then the healing process, whether the marriage continues or ends, will begin from a false foundation. What does a 3-year affair say? There is one very important thing that must be stated clearly, because if the true nature of the situation is misunderstood, every decision that follows can easily go in the wrong direction. An extramarital relationship lasting 3 years is absolutely not a crush, not a moment of weakness, and certainly cannot be called a single mistake. Those concepts only apply when an act happens in a moment, is followed by confusion or immediate remorse, and is not repeated. Here, 3 years means a parallel relationship with emotional investment. It is a process. Time was given, choices were made repeatedly, there was concealment, arrangement, and a deliberate intention to maintain it. For a relationship to last that long, the person involved must continuously choose to prioritize it, despite being a husband, a father, and a married man. This reveals 3 very clear truths. First, he allowed himself to betray. Not because he did not know right from wrong, but because he internally justified his behavior with rationalizations such as, it's just an outlet, it doesn't affect the family, or I still fulfill my responsibilities. When someone grants themselves permission to betray, the moral boundary of marriage has already been broken. Second, he lived 2 lives. One life as a husband and father within the family, the other as a man in love, being understood, living out the emotional side he could no longer find in his marriage. Living this double life not only wounds the wife, but also erodes the husband's own character and inner integrity. Third, and most painfully, he accepted hurting you over a long period of time, not because he didn't know it would cause you pain, but because he placed his own emotions and needs above the emotional safety of his spouse. This was not accidental. It was a choice sustained over years. And this is the key point in answering your question. Can the marriage be fixed? Because a marriage cannot be healed by apologies or belated regret alone. It can only be considered salvageable when the person who caused the harm fully confronts the seriousness of what they have done and is willing to take responsibility for the consequences, both the emotional damage and the trust that has been broken. Can the marriage be fixed? The honest answer is, it can, but it is very difficult, and not everyone should try to fix it. It can only be repaired if all 4 of the following conditions are met at the same time. 1. He truly ends the extramarital relationship. If reconciliation is to be discussed at all, the very first and mandatory step is not an apology, not promises, but the complete termination of the extramarital relationship. Without this step, every other effort is merely a temporary patch. Ending it here does not mean saying it in words. It must be demonstrated through clear and consistent actions over time. First, there must be absolutely no form of contact. No texting, no calling, no social media following, no indirect checking in, no accidental encounters. A relationship that lasted 3 years cannot simply disappear without a firm decision and a very high level of personal discipline. Second, there can be no secrecy in any form. A person who has betrayed cannot demand immediate trust, but must accept transparency as part of their responsibility. Transparency is not about being controlled. It is about proving that there is nothing left to hide. If there are still secrets, still dark corners, then trust cannot be rebuilt. Third, be especially cautious of the familiar line. Please understand, I need more time. In this context, more time is often not for healing, but for prolonging ambiguity, keeping both sides, neither losing the family nor ending the outside relationship. This is a form of avoiding responsibility, not genuine remorse. Therefore, if there is no absolute decisiveness yet, if the husband is still hesitant, still nostalgic, still maintaining contact, or still trying to delay a decision, do not rush into talking about reconciliation. A marriage cannot be rebuilt on a foundation of ambiguity and half measures. Reconciliation can only begin after the old door has been completely closed. Otherwise, every effort by the wife, whether born of love or sacrifice, will only prolong and deepen the wound. If there's no clear break, do not talk about reconciliation. 2. He takes responsibility, not shifting blame. When considering the possibility of reconciliation, there is one decisive criterion, where the husband truly takes responsibility for his actions. Taking responsibility is not about saying, I'm sorry, but about not trying to dilute the wrongdoing to lessen the burden on oneself. Statements like, you were emotionally distant, you didn't understand me, or our marriage became boring, may sound like emotional sharing, but in reality, they are subtle forms of blame shifting. They move the focus away from infidelity, which is a conscious choice, and instead assign the cause to the wife or to circumstances. It must be stated clearly, every marriage goes through periods of exhaustion, distance, even boredom. But not everyone in those marriages chooses to have an affair. The difference lies in personal choice, inner strength, and moral boundaries. Infidelity is not an inevitable result of a troubled marriage. It is a personal decision made when facing that trouble. Someone who truly wants to repair the relationship will say, I made the wrong choice. I hurt you. Whatever the reasons, it is still my responsibility. They do not use circumstances as excuses, do not use the wife's shortcomings as justification, and do not demand understanding before accepting responsibility. By contrast, when someone apologizes while simultaneously explaining why they had to do it, what they are protecting is not the marriage, but an ego that is not yet ready to face its own wrongdoing. Only when the husband dares to face the truth, infidelity was my choice, no one forced me, does a real foundation for change exist. Otherwise, all later attempts at reconciliation will be temporary because the root of the problem, avoiding responsibility, remains intact. Infidelity is a choice, not an accident. 3. You still have the strength to forgive, not merely endure. When facing the question of whether to continue the marriage, many wives say, I can forgive. But in relationship counseling, what truly matters is not the words, but your genuine inner capacity. Forgiveness is not forcing yourself to forget what happened, nor is it compelling yourself to live as if you were never hurt. In its healthy sense, forgiveness means being able to face the past without using it to torment each other every day, without turning pain into a weapon, and without turning yourself into someone who is constantly on guard. True forgiveness requires a great deal of emotional energy. It requires inner stability, time, and an environment that is safe enough for wounds to heal. Not everyone has the strength for this, and that is not wrong. Be honest with yourself. If, deep inside, you live constantly in suspicion, fearing another betrayal, carry feelings of resentment and humiliation, but dare not express them, always feel you are in a lower position, having to try harder to keep the other person tongues, then that is no longer forgiveness, but endurance. Endurance may allow you to remain in the marriage, but it will not give you peace. It causes you to shrink yourself, lose confidence, and gradually lose the joy of living. In this case, staying is not noble. It is a form of prolonged, self-inflicted suffering. No one can heal while living in a relationship that continually triggers fear and old wounds. The right decision is not the one that reassures others, but the one that prevents you from betraying yourself. Because a woman who is emotionally at peace is always the most important foundation for herself and for her children. In such a situation, staying is also a form of self-inflicted suffering. 4. Both of you rebuild the relationship from the beginning. When a marriage has gone through betrayal, it is essential to understand this. It cannot return to what it once was. The past has changed, trust has been wounded, and both people involved are no longer the same as they were at the beginning of their love. Trying to go back to how it was often only leads to disappointment because it denies what has happened and avoids the truth that must be faced. Rebuilding the relationship from the beginning means accepting that the old relationship has ended. And if it is to continue, it must be a new one, between two people who are more mature, more aware of their limits, and more conscious of their emotional responsibility. At this stage, both must relearn how to love each other, not through instinct or habit, but through intention and awareness. Loving again means knowing how to listen when the other speaks, knowing how to express one's needs clearly, and knowing when to stop before hurting each other. Communication is no longer about arguing right or wrong, but about seeking to understand and to be understood, even when that is uncomfortable. More importantly, rebuilding can only happen when both participate. One person cannot carry the work of repairing an entire marriage alone. If only the wife tries to change, to be forgiving, to hold things together, that is not rebuilding. That is self-sacrifice. In many cases, support from marriage counseling or a mental health professional is necessary. Not because the marriage is too weak, but because the wounds are too deep. A neutral third party can help both sides recognize old patterns, learn healthy communication, and reestablish safe emotional boundaries, something that is often very difficult for those involved to do on their own. Rebuilding from the beginning is a long process that requires patience, commitment, and courage from both sides. But when done correctly, it is not only about saving a marriage, it is also an opportunity for each person to become a better version of themselves in love. A painful but necessary truth. Not every marriage should be saved, and not every sacrifice is noble. In relationship counseling, there is a truth that is very hard to accept, but must be faced. Not every marriage should be saved at all costs, and not every sacrifice within a marriage is something to be honored. We are often taught that keeping the family intact is the most important thing, that a woman who endures is a good woman. But in reality, many marriages are preserved not because of love, but because of fear. Some people stay for the children, believing that children need a family that looks complete. What they forget is that what children need even more is an emotionally safe environment. One where parents are not living in constant tension, resentment, and prolonged hurt. Some people stay out of fear of loneliness, fear of starting over, fear of society's judgment, fear of the emptiness that comes when a familiar relationship is no longer there. And some stay simply because they have been together for too long, because the relationship has become part of life itself, even though the real connection inside is gone. But if a marriage no longer has love, meaning there is no longer care, understanding, or the desire to walk together, no longer has respect, meaning personal boundaries are dismissed and your pain is not taken seriously, no longer has emotional safety, meaning you must always be guarded, suspicious, and suppress your own feelings, then trying to hold on is not saving, it is prolonging the pain. It is not a noble sacrifice, but a form of trading away your own happiness to maintain the appearance of a family that is already fractured inside. A marriage is only worth continuing when it remains a place where you can be yourself, be respected, and be healed, not a place where you must constantly endure so that others can feel at ease. Advice for you, before deciding whether to repair or let go. Before you rush to ask, can this marriage be fixed? Pause for a moment. Because the more important question is not about the marriage's capacity to survive, but about your own endurance, values, and true needs. A marriage cannot be saved by the effort, tears, or sacrifice of just one person. Therefore, before making any decision, you need to honestly face yourself with 3 very difficult but very necessary questions. The first question, if he does not truly change, can you accept living another 10 years in the current situation? Imagine your future life if everything only gets a little better, but there is no fundamental change. Do you still have enough energy to live with ongoing doubt, insecurity, and prolonged pain? This question is not meant to scare you, but to help you clearly see your own limits of endurance. The second question, are you staying because you still love him or because you are afraid? Fear of loneliness, fear of public judgment, fear that your children will grow up without a father, fear of starting over, fear that you are not strong enough. These fears are very real and very human. But love and fear are two completely different motivations. A decision driven by fear often leads to endurance. A decision driven by love, including love for yourself, is the only one capable of bringing lasting peace. The third question, and the deepest one, do your children need a family that looks complete, or a mother who is emotionally at peace? Children do not grow up only on meals and a roof over their heads, but also on the emotional atmosphere within the family. A mother who lives in constant inner conflict, resentment, and self-suppression can hardly provide true emotional safety for her children, even if the family still has both parents. These three questions do not require immediate answers, but they help you shift the focus from trying to save a marriage to protecting your own wholeness and inner peace. A right decision is not one that pleases everyone, but one that allows you to continue living without losing yourself. Conclusion. The most important thing you need to remember: this marriage may be repairable, but not through endurance, tears, or by you carrying the entire emotional burden alone. No relationship can be healed if only one person struggles to hold on while the other stands aside or changes only halfway. Love cannot be rekindled through the fear of losing each other, nor can it be preserved through solitary sacrifice. A relationship can only be revived when both people actively move toward each other, work on themselves, and take responsibility for the harm they have caused. It must be emphasized that a 3-year affair is a very deep wound. It cannot be minimized, nor can it be soothed by a few apologies or vague promises. This wound requires time, concrete actions, and genuine change to heal. Otherwise, it will continue to fester and cause long-term pain. You are not wrong for being hurt. You are not less valuable because you were betrayed. And you fully deserve to be loved with respect, honesty, and emotional safety. Whether you choose to continue or to let go, remember that your worth does not lie in someone else's decision, but in your courage to choose what is healthiest for yourself. A woman who respects herself will always have the right to choose happiness in her own way. Now, I will guide you on how to talk to your husband during this decision-making phase. This is no longer the time to argue about right and wrong, nor is it the moment to release all the pent-up emotions in anger or despair. This is a decisive stage where every word can either open a path to healing or close the final door of the marriage. How you speak to your husband at this time is just as important as what you say. The goal of the conversation is not to win an argument, but to clarify 3 core elements: truth, responsibility, and the genuine possibility of change. Before you begin, you need to prepare yourself mentally. Do not have this conversation when you are overwhelmed by anger, pain, or pleading. When you enter a dialogue from a position of weakness, you can easily be drawn into explaining, justifying, or diminishing your own value, none of which will help you make a clear decision. At this stage, what you need to convey is not control, but clarity. Clarity about your boundaries, clarity about what you can accept, and clarity about the consequences if those boundaries continue to be violated. This clarity does not require a harsh tone, but it does require firmness. Most importantly, remember this: you are not entering this conversation to beg him to change. You are entering to listen and see whether he is willing to change, and if so, how he will do it, within what time frame, and through what concrete actions. This conversation does not need to be long or dramatic, but it does need to be honest and focused. Every question you ask is meant to help you see reality clearly, not to hold on through emotion. Before you try to repair the marriage, save the family, or step into decisive conversations with your husband, pause for a moment and return to yourself. What matters most right now is not holding on to anyone, but preserving the wholeness of your own soul. A heart that is still bleeding cannot build a healthy relationship, no matter how hard you try. Infidelity does not only shatter trust, it also quietly erodes self-respect, a sense of safety and self-worth in the one who stays. When you are still submerged in pain, resentment, or fear, every important conversation is likely to turn into words spoken from wounds, rather than from the clarity required for the major decisions of your life. Healing is not about forgetting what happened, but about daring to face the pain, name it, and not deny it. Allow yourself to feel sad, angry, and disappointed, but do not let those emotions steer your life. As your inner world gradually settles, you will understand what you truly need, where your non-negotiable boundaries lie, and what you should no longer compromise on. Healing also restores your emotional position. When you no longer speak from a place of begging, clinging, or fear of loss, you will speak with calmness, clarity, and self-respect. That is the difference. Not to make someone else afraid of losing you, but to ensure that you do not lose yourself. Remember, a marriage only truly has a chance to be rebuilt when both people are emotionally whole. If you are still wounded, you have every right to pause, care for yourself, and seek support from family, friends, or a mental health professional. This is not weakness. It is a courageous and responsible choice for your life. And only when you begin from inner healing will every decision that follows, whether to continue or to let go, come from peace, self-respect, and awareness, rather than from fear or despair. Streams of Love would like to close here. May you be gentle with yourself, clear-minded in the choices ahead, and brave enough to choose the path that brings true peace to your heart.